everybody. My name is Danielle Cadet. I am the managing editor of Refinery 29 Unbothered, as you mentioned, which is Refinery's sub-brand that's dedicated to Black millennial women. It's content created for Black women by Black women. And I've been in media for about a decade now. Before Refinery, I was a deputy editor at ESPN. I spent 4 years at ESPN. I launched a site called The Undefeated, which explores the intersection of race, sports, and culture. And then before that, I was at HuffPost Black Voices. I was the editor of HuffPost Black Voices. So I've basically, my whole career really spent, I've just been dedicated to Black audiences, basically my entire career. And, it's always been really important to me to tell Black stories and to speak to Black audiences. And so at HuffPost, I was doing it sort of from a general news perspective. When I was there, that was actually right when the Trayvon Martin investigation started and the George Zimmerman trial, and what I like to call sort of the roots of the Black Lives Matter movement. And then I went into sports and, kind of focused on how the Black Lives Matter movement affected athletes and affected sports culture. And just so much of, the fact that Black culture is so entrenched in sports culture, music, sneakers, style, everything about sports culture is really related to Black culture. And then coming to Refinery, to focus on Black millennial women and to really fill the void that I feel like existed in the digital space. Was just that we as Black millennial women did not have a digital haven, a digital space that was specifically for us and by us, and comprised of, a team of Black women who are really part of this community and creating this content from a personal place.
I love this. First of all, you don't look like you've been in this for a decade. That's ridiculous.
God bless you.
I would like to make that very clear. You do not. Sheesh. You have a strong passion for wherever you work to support Black voices. Yes. And I wanted to know or dive into a little bit more how, where did that develop? Because I know not every Black person or every Black woman is culturally adept. You know what I'm saying? They're not here for the Black culture, or here to always speak about Black culture or want to whitewash some things down. Where did your spark come from to make sure that Black voices are heard wherever you are? Because it seems like wherever you go, a Black voice is heard. Danielle stepped here. All right, there's a Black voice heard there. Danielle stepped here. There's a Black voice heard there. So where did this come from?
Yeah, that's real. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I definitely think all skin folk and kin folk, but everybody to each his own, I guess. For me, I just have always been, I've always been really proud of who I am. I do think a lot of that came from my upbringing. A lot of, my mom came to this country when she was relatively young. She was 8 when she came to this country. And for her, being Haitian was something that she was made fun of for, or a lot of people looked down on her for. And so I grew up in an environment where my family really reinforced just the pride that comes with being Caribbean and comes with being Haitian specifically. And Haiti just has such an incredible story as the only Black republic to have a successful slave revolt, and the first Caribbean country to fight for its independence and to actually help so many countries across the world, particularly in South America, gain their independence. So I grew up really just proud of who I was, you know what I mean? Just proud of being a Black girl. I read, I don't know if anybody remembers the book Mufaro's Beautiful Daughters, which was this book that was about these 2 African princesses. So I just always grew up with Blackness around me. I had a Kenya doll. I don't know if anybody remembers Kenya dolls. I had a Kenya doll. I had just just things. My perspective was Black storytelling my whole life. You know what I mean? Growing up watching shows like Family Matters or Moesha, or just seeing, representations of myself on screen and realizing how important that was. But at the same time, even though I had a very Black and prideful upbringing, I was in mostly white spaces. So I went to Catholic school, and I was, you know, most of the time I was the only Black girl in the room. So, you know, I was a cheerleader. I was the only Black cheerleader. I was, you know, a lot of times in like AP or honors classes, and I was the only Black girl in my classes. So I learned, it was like almost this weird dichotomy of like at home, it was like Blackness all around, and I was so proud to be Black and like all of that. But then like in these like majority spaces, it was just me, you know? And so I think that's where it came from. I think that's where it started, to be honest. It was like, I just felt it was really important. I just didn't want another Black girl to not see herself, no matter where she was. You know what I mean? Whether she was in a room with all white people or in a room with all Black people. You know what I mean? Like, I just want, I think there was something about that personal experience that just drove me to be like, you know what? I'm going to make sure that this story is told all the time, that there's a form of storytelling, that there's a representation of Blackness all the time. Because I think Black people are honestly a gift to society. Like I feel so blessed to be a Black woman. And I just feel like, you know, as particularly as Black women, we give so much. And we carry so much of the world like on our shoulders and on our backs. And so I think it's an important narrative to tell. And I think there's such a rich, there's so many rich stories there behind that. And so it was really important to me to kind of take, you know, the pride of my upbringing, but also that challenge of being the only Black girl in the room. You know, I wanted to make sure that I created spaces for Black women and men after me to still feel comfortable no matter what. And so I think that's really where that came from. And then as I got older and I started going a bit more into journalism, you know, I went, my undergrad, my bachelor's is in magazine publishing, because when I was in college, magazines were thriving and were still, you know, around. And then by the time I graduated, you could not get a job in magazines. It was like really hard to do. So I stayed for one more year, and I got my master's in digital publishing. So I started actually going into digital, but I wanted to be the editor-in-chief of like Ebony magazine or Essence. And like, so that's what I grew up with. You know, I grew up with like Ebony on my coffee table or Essence on my coffee table. And so it was like, yeah, I'm gonna do that. Like, there was no doubt in my mind that I was like, yep, that's me. Like, that's what I'm gonna do. Those are the stories I'm gonna tell.
Let's start talking about Unbothered. So when you were brought on the team at Refinery 29 to basically steer Unbothered in the right direction, how did you bridge like Refinery 29 and Unbothered? How were you able to bridge that gap? Because Refinery 29, yes, is for women, right?
Right.
And then Unbothered is just for Black women. How are you able to take the people that were over here, bring them to here?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, so, you know, I've got to shout out the group of Black women at Refinery 29 prior to me, who actually, you know, came together and really in a very grassroots effort, launched Unbothered. And you know, they came together to really think about like the mission, and really in a similar way kind of said, like, we don't see this representation of ourselves, and we've got to fix that problem, you know. And then so that was, Unbothered launched on Instagram in December 2017. So I came on board in October 2018. And basically what I did was I took a lot of my experience from places like ESPN's The Undefeated and from HuffPost Black Voices. And I brought that experience over with me to kind of to implement a growth strategy, to really think about like, how do we go the extra mile? How do we go beyond an Instagram channel? How do we launch a newsletter? How do we have more editorial content on site? How do we grow the team? How do we host events? How do we, you know, have a room in 29 rooms? All of those things were really, you know, I was able to take my experience at other brands and be able to say, like, okay, let me apply some of the strategy that I did in these other places. you know, I think a lot of it, I've been really, really fortunate. A lot of it has to do with having a seat at the table, you know, and I take that responsibility very seriously. I think, you know, I was able to demand respect and to garner respect, not only based on my experience, but just based on my access into spaces that, you know, oftentimes as Black women, we don't have access to. And so I think being able to do that, I was able to bridge that gap, right? I was able to say, okay, we need to be part of these larger Refinery 29 conversations. You know, we need to, you know, be involved in planning, and we need to, our work needs to be promoted on a wider scale. You know, so many times we're doing the work, but like we're doing it in our own little siloed box. You know what I mean? And it's like, no, like that's whack. Like I'm not, everybody needs to see, I have to shout out Julie Wilson, formerly of Essence. She's now a Cosmopolitan. She's incredible, a former colleague of mine and a dear friend. She said in a conversation she and I were having, is like, the world needs to see our magic. You know what I mean? And like, yes, our magic is for us and should be, and there's something special about us having, you know, our own little haven and our own little safe space, but also like the world don't get this Black girl magic. You know what I mean? So a lot of it was me being able to be at the table and say, yeah, we need just as much promotion, and we need just as much support, and we need just as many resources to grow. You know what I mean? I think the other thing that Unbothered does is it's a revenue driver. I think, you know, oftentimes people, you know, I think people sometimes get confused in that, like, we not only is targeting Black female audiences and targeting Black audiences in general, it's not only the right thing to do, it's the financially smart thing to do. The world is getting browner every single day. And a lot of companies are, you know, looking to target Black audiences. Black buying power is, you know, in the trillions. You know, like we have a lot of power financially in this country, even though we're only 13% of the population. So, you know, there are a lot of companies that want to target Black audiences. And so that's the other way I've been able to kind of bridge that gap, is just saying, like, you know, this is a revenue driver. Like, you know, media is a tough industry. You know, it's not, we're not lawyers. I'm not a lawyer. You know, I'm not like, we're not in an industry that's just like, we're all getting paid millions of dollars. You know what I mean? So it is really, the way you keep the lights on is you drive revenue. And so I think that's another part of the reason why I've really been able to push the envelope there. And
I was actually, not to cut you off, I was actually going to ask you about how monetization of Unbothered, how were you able to do that at first? Because I know it's probably a lot of, you know, maybe a lot of sponsors or different brands might have been hesitant to work with a brand that focused solely on Black women, even though, as you said, focusing on Black women financially is one of the best ideas. However, some brands are like, you know, like our audience are the people that we're trying to brand this lotion to, or this this hair care products to. I'm trying to brand it towards white women predominantly. So how were you able to, at the time at least? I mean, 2017 wasn't too far ago, but I think now Black culture has definitely been accepted much more in 2020 than in 2017. So how are you able to get those sponsors, land those sponsors for Unbothered?
So the first thing is, we did not open up for sponsorship in the first year of Unbothered's existence. The really important thing was to grow the community and to be engaged. We didn't want Black women to feel like, you know, we were just selling to them. It was actually supposed to be a genuine relationship building with our audience, which honestly was the smartest thing we could have ever done, because we really then saw that we had incredibly high engagement rates and we had the trust of our community. And so then when we opened up to sponsorship a year later in December 2018, we were able to take what we learned about our community. We were able to take the statistics and the data and the analytics and show to companies, to sponsors, like, this is the engagement rate you're getting compared to a lot of other publications. So the first thing we also did was we set up guidelines and like kind of like our content commandments when it comes to what kind of companies we are interested in working with. We vet brands pretty heavily before we're willing, before we open up a sponsorship relationship. One of the most important things, to your point and to your question, is that brand has to value the concept of safe spaces. It's really important that that brand understands that safe spaces are, why safe spaces exist and why they're important. That's number one. Number two is the brand has to respect the fact that we are not here to, we don't use the word like women of color. We're specific to Black women.
Black women.
So we really only work with brands that are comfortable with that and that understand that and respect that. I am personally in a lot of, I personally meet with the clients, with the branded clients, and I'm in a lot of those meetings myself. And I outright say, you know, Unbothered is not, if you're looking to, you know, kind of cast a wide net of like women of color, we're not your girl, you know, we're not we're not the publication for that. We're here to specifically speak to Black women. And if you understand the value of that and you understand the value of a safe space and why we should be targeted rather than casting this wide net, then you're the kind of person we want to work with. So, you know, we were really specific about, you know, what a brand had to, you know, what the brand values had to be in order for us to feel comfortable being in a partnership with them. And then we also had the time to really, you know, develop analytics and to be able to show brands, you know, you're really tapping into a highly engaged audience who trusts us. And again, I think spending the time with our audience without opening up to any branded content was really important too, so that our audience understood, like, we're not here to sell to you. We're actually really here to create a safe space for you. And if we are working with a company, it's because we think they're the right company that values us as an audience.
Danielle, I personally, like I've said in the beginning, I am a fan. I must say, I am a fan of yours. And I've listened to some of the things that you've done several lives. I've read some of your stuff, some of your articles. And I've noticed that you use the term that you mentioned already, entrepreneur, a lot. Yeah. And coming from someone, me specifically, who, and we've had this conversation before, who's, I want to create a format, a place where I can have content for women of color, Black women, and have Black women hired, Black women creating the content. Your idea of being an entrepreneur, let's talk about that a little bit more, about creating, with where you are, creating a space for whomever. Maybe you're I don't know, maybe you're an Asian woman and you feel like Asian people aren't represented at the company that you're at, or maybe even you're, I don't know, I'm trying to think of so many different things. You're a gay man and you feel like that gay men aren't accepted at your workplace as well. How important is it to be an entrepreneur? Because you can, you know, you can set a standard at that point.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, I think being an entrepreneur is first, let me say, it depends on who you are, right? I know this about myself. I am not the kind of person, like, I need a, God willing, a regular paycheck. Like, I personally am not, like, I'm kind of risk averse in that, like, I'm not totally prepared to just kind of like jump and leave my job and, you know, kind of build something from the ground up. And shout out to the people who are, because I think it's incredible. You know, again, like I said, I was raised by a family that's very much like, you have to have a plan, you know what I mean? So that's just that's who I am. Like, you know, and not to say that entrepreneurs don't have a plan. For me, it's just that, like, I'm a little bit safer when it comes to my professional moves and goals. And so I just know who I am, right? And I think that's one of the most important things, is knowing who you are and how you thrive and what environments professionally you thrive in. So I know that I thrive in, you know, kind of in a full-time atmosphere. So that was the first thing. You know, the second thing was really to your point, kind of identifying who is this audience that I'd like to speak to. Is it Black women? Is it gay men? Is it, the LGBT community as a whole? Is it, who is it? Women of color? Am I trying to, cast a wide net? And doing the research. I mean, like I said, kind of going back to when I was telling my parents where I wanted to go to college and how I wanted to change I wanted to change my career path, I had to do the research and I had to make the case. And I think the thing about being an entrepreneur is, whatever company it is, you have to make the case to whoever those stakeholders are. Like, this is the reason why this is a community that matters. And that's everything from, numbers, again, going back to like buying power, going back to brand engagement, really investigating who is this community and how can this community help us? Like, what can this community do for us as a company? Because the reality is that, like, you want to solve your boss's problem. Like, everybody's boss has issues, and you never want to be the person who's bringing more problems to your boss, right? Like, I think that's the thing about entrepreneurship that people is really important, and people need to know that, is like, don't just come out and be like, well, we need to be doing this. Like, we're not doing this and we need to be doing this. Okay, why should we be doing this? How is this going to help me? What is this going to do? Like, a lot of people, how are you going to make your boss look good, quite frankly? And, you want to be able to come with some facts and with some research about this audience to say, hey, actually, this is an audience we need to be tapping into, because these are brands that would spend money with us if we did this. These are opportunities that we, could have access to if we did this. Really doing the research about the community and what you could get out of it. You know what I mean? And then the strategy. I mean, I think you then take that data, you take those analytics, and you apply it to strategy, and you say, this is how I'm going to do it. But yeah, I mean, I think entrepreneurship is important because there have to be people in companies that are going to change it from the inside out. I think if we all just leave these companies, quite frankly, it'll be left with a lot of white people who don't know what they're doing. And, someone's got to be there to push the envelope and to push back and, and to say, like, I mean, how many times have we seen terrible headlines or, white publications mistake a Black celebrity for another Black celebrity. And like, we've seen so many mistakes, and it's like, the more of us that have a seat at the table, the more of us that are in the room, the more we can help change this. And quite frankly, because this is another thing, again, going back to what I said about the world needs our magic, because Shirley and Becky and whatever her name, they need to know just as much about Black culture as I'm expected to know about white culture.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of times, like, we just expect the Black person to know and the Black person to check off the box about Black culture. But I'm still expected to know about every white band and every white actor and this and that. No, you need to know just as much about my culture as I know about yours. You need to know who the new hot female rapper is just as much as I know who the new Taylor Swift song. And I don't even want to know the new Taylor Swift song. You know what I mean? So, like, I think it's really important for us to be in these spaces, and entrepreneurship is important because we've got to push and challenge our white counterparts to know just as much about our culture as we're expected to know about theirs.
Yes. And I was going to say, when it comes to, and it stands out in my head when you discuss entrepreneurship, because I feel like people always promote being an entrepreneur. Start that business. Start that Start that blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. And I wouldn't say I'm against entrepreneurship, but I don't know if I could go ahead and start a little business for myself.
I mean, here's the thing: entrepreneurship isn't for everybody, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, that's the way that the world works. You know what I mean? Like, some people are meant to do. Everybody's meant to do different things, and you got to know your strengths. You got to know what you're good at, and that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, because don't get me wrong, like, I support the hell out of all of my friends who are entrepreneurs, and I think it's incredible, and it takes an immense amount of courage you know. But at the same time, it takes courage to do things inside of your company as well.
And
Both
most
of
people
those things take courage.
don't promote that either. Like most people don't promote starting something from within, starting from, they always say, if you don't see something, leave the company. And that's why I like when you talk about it, because it makes it, you know, better for people to actually stay in those companies and work those companies from the inside out, rather than just leaving them, like you said, and leaving. And that company will, you know, if they aren't servicing Black people, they will, because we are we're a big population, so they will do it, and they will leave it up to, as you said, Shirley or Becky, or they will leave it to them and they will mess it up. So I think it's great that that you're promoting entrepreneurship. Again, nothing against entrepreneurs, go ahead, do your thing, but I don't think there's enough voices saying, go ahead and start that in your business, go ahead and open up another branch of something in the job that you're in. Thank you so much, Danielle. Maybe, you know, next time you see me, I might be on the unbothered side, but we'll talk about that another day at another time.